Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to dive into a topic
Yeah.
the Army calls information advantage.
Mm-hmm.
Now that might sound a
Yeah.
little bit technical, right?
Yeah.
But it's about way more than just knowing a bunch of stuff, right?
A lot more.
It's about how you use it. We're using excerpts
Absolutely.
from ADP 313 information.pdf.
That's right.
That's basically
Okay.
the Army's playbook on this. And by the end of this deep dive,
It is.
you're going to get why this matters, even if you're not planning on any tactical maneuvers anytime soon.
That's right. Think of this as the Army's guide to winning, not just on the battlefield, but in any situation where information is key.
So it's like having the upper hand, but not just because you've got more intel, right?
Exactly. Imagine two chess players. One can see the whole board, the other's blindfolded.
Yeah.
The one who sees the whole picture is going to have a huge advantage, right? That's what information advantage is all about.
Okay, that makes way more sense. So it's not just what you know, but how you use it to make moves before the other guy even knows what hit him.
Precisely. And the Army has this whole system for making sure they have that advantage. They break it down into 5 core activities: enable, protect, inform, influence, and attack.
Wow, 5 whole activities: enable, protect, inform, influence, and attack. Sounds a bit intense, but I guess it makes sense. You got to cover all your bases. Let's break them down. Enable, what's that about?
Enabling is all about laying the groundwork. It's about making sure you have the right systems, the right training, and the right people in place to gather, process, and share information effectively.
So like setting up your information headquarters, making sure that intel is flowing smoothly.
Exactly. Think of it like building a high-powered engine. You need all the right parts working together before you can even think about hitting the gas.
Okay, so enable is about building the machine. What about protect? I'm guessing that one's pretty self-explanatory.
Well, on the surface, yes. Protecting your information is absolutely essential. But it goes way deeper than just putting a lock on a file. You've got to know how the other side is trying to get at your information. And the Army calls this knowing your enemy.
Interesting. So it's like you're constantly trying to figure out what tricks they might have up their sleeve so you can stay one step ahead. Makes me think of all the data breaches we hear about these days. Companies spend millions on cybersecurity, but hackers still seem to find a way in.
It's a constant cat and mouse game. Absolutely. And it's not just about protecting digital data. The Army has this concept called OPSE, Operations Security, that goes way beyond just firewalls and passwords.
OPSC, I've heard that before, but always thought it was super top secret, military-only stuff. Is this something regular people need to be thinking about too?
You'd be surprised. Imagine you're planning a surprise party. You wouldn't want the guest of honor to find out, right?
Right.
You'd be careful about what you say, who you talk to, even what you post on social media. That's kind of like OPSCC, but on a much larger scale.
Okay, so it's about being careful about what information you reveal, even the stuff that seems harmless. Makes sense, especially in today's world where everything is online.
Exactly. And the Army takes OPSCC very seriously. They analyze potential threats, figure out where their vulnerabilities are, and then take steps to plug those holes.
So it's a constantly evolving process, always adapting to new threats and vulnerabilities.
Right. And it highlights how interconnected everything is these days. Physical security, cybersecurity, even something as simple as being mindful of what you say in public. It all plays a role in protecting vital information.
Wow, it's a lot more than just locking up your files, that's for sure. So we've got enable, the foundation, and protect, the shield. What about inform?
That's where things get really interesting. It's not just about broadcasting information. It's about getting the right message to the right audience at the right time.
Ah, so there's a strategy involved here. You're not just shouting into the void. Who are we talking about when it comes to these audiences?
The Army actually breaks it down into 3 main audiences: internal, domestic, and international.
Internal, like within the ranks. Makes sense. Got to keep your own troops in the loop. What about domestic audiences? That's us, right? Why is it important for the Army to inform civilians?
It's about transparency and building trust. The American public has a right to know what their military is doing, and clear, accurate information helps ensure they have the right information to form their own opinions.
Okay, so it's about keeping the lines of communication open, being honest and upfront about what's going on. No shady stuff happening behind closed doors.
Exactly. And it's also about countering misinformation. In today's world, false narratives can spread like wildfires, especially online. The Army needs to be proactive in getting out the truth and setting the record straight.
That's a battle I think we can all relate to these days. Feels like every time you turn around, there's some new conspiracy theory or fake news story making the rounds. It's hard to know what to believe sometimes.
It definitely is. And that's why this inform activity is so crucial. The Army needs to be a trusted source of information, both for its own troops and for the public at large.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've covered internal and domestic audiences. What about the international one? Who are we talking about there, and why is it important to inform them?
This one's a bit more complex. International audiences can include allies, neutral parties, and even potential adversaries. The goal is to shape perceptions of the U.S. military, build relationships, and potentially even influence behavior.
Okay, so it's almost like diplomacy, but with a military twist.
Exactly. And it requires a lot of coordination with other government agencies like the State Department to ensure everyone's on the same page.
I can imagine that getting pretty tricky at times, especially when you're dealing with countries that might not exactly be friendly towards the U.S.
It definitely can be. But remember, communication is key, even when you're dealing with difficult situations. The more you can understand the other side's perspective, the better equipped you'll be to engage with them effectively.
Okay, so Inform is all about communication strategy, making sure the right people get the right message. We've got enable, protect, and inform. What about those other two activities? We've got influence and attack. Those sound pretty intense.
They are, and we'll dive into those after we come back.
That's good.
Welcome back. So before we went away, we were talking about inform, and now it's all about the Army strategically getting the right message to the right people.
Right.
Now let's dive into the last two pieces of their information advantage puzzle. We got influence and attack.
Okay. Influence, that sounds kind of sneaky, like we're trying to manipulate people. Is that what this is all about?
It's not about manipulation. It's about
Yeah.
understanding how information shapes perceptions and using that knowledge to achieve our goal.
Okay, I'm listening. But how is that different from inform, where we were just talking about being transparent and honest?
Think of inform as laying the groundwork, providing the facts, and building credibility. Influence is about taking that foundation and using it to shape the narrative, to encourage certain behaviors or decisions.
So it's like you've given people the facts, and now you're helping them see how those facts fit into a bigger picture.
Exactly. It's about persuasion, not coercion. And the Army uses this in all sorts of ways, both on and off the battlefield.
Give me an example. How does the Army influence people in a non-combat situation?
Let's say there's a natural disaster, and the Army is sent in to help with relief efforts.
Right.
Part of their job is going to be communicating with the local population, assuring them that help is on the way, providing instructions on how to stay safe, and maybe even dispelling rumors or misinformation that might be causing panic.
Okay. So in that situation, influence is about providing reassurance and guidance, helping people make good decisions in a crisis. Makes sense. But how does this work in a more, well, a more military context?
It can be used to deter aggression from potential adversaries.
Hmm.
By demonstrating our capabilities and resolve, we can make it clear that the costs of conflict outweigh the benefits.
So it's kind of like, don't even think about messing with us because we're ready and we're not afraid to use it.
In a way, yes, but it's also about building relationships with allies, fostering trust, and working together towards common goals. Influence is a multifaceted tool that can be used in all sorts of ways.
Wow, it's a lot more nuanced than I thought. It's not just about propaganda and trying to trick people.
Not at all. It's about using communication strategically to achieve your objectives, whether that's providing aid, deterring aggression, or building partnerships.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've covered enable, protect, inform, and influence. Now, for the big one, attack. I have to admit, this is the one I'm most curious about, but also a little apprehensive. It sounds, well, aggressive.
It is a strong word, but remember we're talking about the information domain.
Right.
Attack, in this context, means disrupting or degrading an adversary's ability to use information effectively.
So it's not about physical attacks, but about attacking their information infrastructure, like hacking into their systems and shutting them down.
That's one aspect of it, yes. Cyber attacks can be incredibly effective at disrupting enemy communications, jamming their radar systems, or even disabling their weapon systems.
Wow, that's some serious stuff. Makes you realize how vulnerable we are in the digital age. But is it all about cyber warfare?
Not necessarily. There are other ways to attack in the information domain.
Okay.
Electronic warfare, for example, can be used to jam radio signals or create false radar signatures.
So you can mess with their ability to communicate or even make them see things that aren't really there.
Exactly. It's like playing a high-tech game of smoke and mirrors. And then there's psychological operations, or PSYOP, which focuses on influencing the behavior of individuals or groups.
PSYOP, that sounds straight out of a spy movie. How does that work?
It can involve spreading propaganda, disseminating rumors, or even using deception tactics to sow confusion and discord among enemy ranks.
So it's all about messing with their minds, making them doubt their own information and question their leadership.
In a way, yes. But remember, attack in this context is always about disrupting the enemy's ability to wage war effectively. It's not about causing unnecessary harm or targeting civilians.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
good to hear. It's a fine line, I imagine, between using these tactics strategically and crossing into unethical territory.
Absolutely. And that's why the Army has strict rules of engagement and carefully considers the potential consequences before taking any action in the information domain.
It's a reminder that even in war, there are limits.
Right.
We're not just out to win at all costs. There's a moral dimension to this as well.
Exactly. And that brings us back to the core concept of information advantage. It's not just about having more data or better technology. It's about using information ethically and responsibly to achieve our goals and protect our interests.
Okay, so we've covered all 5 of the Army's core activities for achieving information advantage: enable, protect, inform, influence, and attack. But how does this all fit together? How do they actually use these activities in the real world?
Well, that's when things get really interesting. We'll dive into that right after we come back.
Okay, we're back, ready to put all these pieces together. We've talked about the 5 activities the Army uses to gain information advantage: enable, protect, inform, influence, and attack.
Right.
It's a lot to keep track of.
It is.
But how do they actually use this stuff in the real world?
It's all about weaving those activities together, creating a seamless strategy. Think of it like a symphony orchestra. You've got all these different sections, instruments, each playing its own part.
Yeah.
But when they come together under the conductor's guidance, they create something truly powerful and harmonious.
So the 5 activities are the instruments, and the Army's overall strategy is like the music they're playing. Interesting analogy. Can you give me a concrete example of how this works in practice?
Absolutely. Let's say there's a hypothetical conflict brewing in a strategically important region. The first step is to enable. The Army would start by gathering intelligence, deploying sensors, establishing secure communications networks, making sure their personnel are trained and ready to go.
Okay, so they're laying the groundwork, setting the stage for action.
Right.
What comes next?
Protect. They'd be taking steps to safeguard their own information, hardening their systems against cyber attacks, implementing strict OPSEC measures, and even using camouflage and concealment to make it harder for the enemy to track their movements.
Right, because if you're not protecting your own information, you're basically handing the advantage to the other side.
Exactly. And while they're doing all that, they're also engaging in inform. They'd be communicating with their own troops, keeping them up to date on the situation, making sure everyone's on the same page. They'd also be reaching out to domestic audiences, providing accurate and timely information to the public, and countering any misinformation that might be circulating.
So they're playing both offense and defense, protecting their own information while shaping the narrative for those watching at home.
And don't forget about the international audience. They might be working behind the scenes to build coalitions with allies, reassure neutral parties, and even try to sow discord among their adversaries.
That's where influence comes into play, right? It's about shaping perceptions and using information to nudge things in a direction that's favorable to us.
Precisely. And if things escalate, they might need to employ attack. This could involve launching cyber attacks to disrupt enemy communications, using electronic warfare to jam their radar systems, or even conducting psychological operations to undermine their morale.
Wow, it's a complex dance, isn't it?
Yeah,
All these different elements working together, constantly adapting to the situation on the ground.
it absolutely is. And it highlights the importance of having a clear strategy and a strong leadership team that can orchestrate all these moving parts.
I'm starting to see why the Army calls this information advantage. It's not just about having the best technology or the most data. It's about understanding the power of information and using it strategically to achieve your goals.
And here's the really fascinating part. This concept isn't just relevant to the military. It applies to so many aspects of our lives.
You're right. Think about business negotiations. The person who's done their research, understands the other side's motivations, and who can present their case persuasively is going to have a huge advantage.
Exactly. And it's the same in politics, in relationships, even in something as simple as a job interview.
So this deep dive into the Army's playbook has actually given us some valuable insights into how to win, not just on the battlefield, but in the everyday battles of life.
Precisely. And here's a final thought to leave you with. In today's world where information is constantly flowing and the lines between truth and falsehood are increasingly blurred, the ability to discern, analyze, and use information wisely is more important than ever.
So true. It's up to each of us to develop those skills, to become savvy consumers and responsible users of information. Otherwise, we risk becoming pawns in someone else's game.
Well said.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of information advantage. We hope you've learned something new and maybe even picked up a few strategies you can use in your own life. Until next time, stay curious and stay informed.